Good morning, everybody. So I'm starting out something new today. Hopefully you find it useful. I've been getting a lot of questions from the community of just like, how does Jackie think? Or how do I do this? Or how do I do that? And instead of answering them one at a time, I thought I would just share it live with all of you. And so we're going to call this Press Play with AI. So just get started. It's very informal. So I'm just going to walk through what I'm doing or how I did it. So the first question we got was, how do I turn the set of agent files into a working custom GPT? So first of all, you may not know what our agent files are, but they're a set of 7 files that you can get access to if you're in our AI ROI Association for consultants, and they give you access to do different things. Like we have 728 of them. This particular one I'm going to show you guys is about board presentation prep. If you were going to go get it from the software, which you would have to reach out to us to get access. But let me just show you what that would look like quick. So in here, we'd have tools, 729 projects. And then the one that I'm actually going to be demoing right now is the board presentation prep. So it's in our talent firm, executive coaching, board presentation prep. And then if you're a part of the community, you can press download and you can get access to those files. So the question was how do I actually get this to be agent-like or to operate for something like ChatGPT? And so the first thing I did was, because I had actually done this a few times before, is I put together, I asked ChatGPT, I was like, this is what I'm doing. Is this what you expected to be done? And then created this small presentation. So I'll walk through it with you, and then at the same time, we'll also do it in ChatGPT. And my hopes is this will be a ride along presentation or ride along instruction that you can use later. So first, the objective today is to help you build a custom GPT. And what we want to do is have you start with an agent library package of 7 workflow files of a production grade custom GPT. So the intention is it will take some intake, which would be, it will get questions answered. You'll have a golden example, which would be what does good look like, an output, some quality gates to make sure that you don't produce garbage. And then at the end, you'll get an HTML file that if you are, again, part of our ROI Association for consultants, you could then upload that file directly to the internet. I suppose I should just keep my ROI Association open so I can show that when we get to that point. Again, if you want more information about that, you can, I'll leave info in the comments at some point. Right now, I'm just trying to walk through and show you guys how to do it. So we'll start with what you start with, that's this. Then we'll go through the architecture of the agent. We'll do the build. We'll show you what GPT instructions to use, show you how it runs. We'll do some testing and reuse. Now, I may not run all the tests while we're on the video because it could go, sometimes they go a really long time. I'm sure you guys have used some ChatGPT chats before, but we'll do our best to talk through it. So what we start with is each package will have 7 files. They're not random. We built a methodology that allows us to do this. The methodology includes these 7 files. So the first one is the start here. And as you might imagine, it's the orientation. It explains what the workflow is. It's not really required to execute, but we put it all into what we build as context. And then the second file is the process agent. And that's how the agent thinks and the sequence of events. This is the execution engine. It's one of the most important files. Here's actually the process that a consultant would go through if they did it just as a human. So the intention, again, is context, but this would be the quick way of doing it as an agent, as we're describing, and then this would be the process the consultant's currently doing. So how the human consultant would approach the engagement, and it helps to improve the depth of the output that you're getting, but doesn't do anything around formatting or anything like that. The next is the context. So this is the intake, right? The things that you would need to know for there to be good details for that GPT to work well. And it's a list of structured questions. One thing we do when we put it into the GPT, which we don't do if you were just to run it from, say, Claude Cowork or Codex or something like that, is we don't ask every single question in the intake because the user would get quite frustrated. So we'll kind of show you how we put a little bit of a gate on that so it doesn't go too far. Then the fifth file is the golden deliverable. So what does good look like? So it controls the structure, the formatting, and the layout. If we have time, or if I have time, I might show you how to tweak that a bit. And then there's the quality HTML, so the acceptance criteria to make sure that it's correct. And this we walk through and kind of use as a test step before we finish. And then the last one is just quick start prompt, and that's how you would do this if you were running it outside of ChatGPT, or you weren't doing a custom GPT, but you're just going to run a list of prompts, right? So which is one thing you could have done with this. You could just take these prompts, run them in ChatGPT's chat, or you could run them in Claude's chat, or you can run them in Gemini's chat. So that's the instruction for being able to do that. It also includes like a note about like what are all the files included. So there's some structure around that one as well. Now, how this works in terms of architecture or how we've set it up is it actually can help you stay in alignment with what we're doing. So this prevents a little bit of future confusion. But the execution layer is the things that are running, right? The execution engine, the sequence of steps, the tasks, right? So that's the process agent. It has all the tasks, the sequence of work. It moves us through the phases. It's essentially the brain of this whole process. The process for the consultant runs is the human consultant reasoning patterns. So it does help the quality better because it brings in some of the thoughts that the consultants would have had in terms of building it. And then the quick start prompt is the section that says, what are all of the deliverables? What are the outputs? Then there's kind of a quality layer. The context, the more context you give, the better you're going to get it. So like this is a board presentation. If you have prior board presentations, if you have the data, if you have your financials, if you have any of that information, obviously you're going to get better information. But it also means we have to like control in the custom GPT that when you have better context, we want to make sure that the better context is overrides like the generic context. Then the other quality part is the example. So we said that's the golden example. It controls formatting, the order of the sections, the depth of the output. And then lastly is the acceptance criteria to say that it works before you deliver it. And we actually kind of pull that out as a separate thing you can look at. So now GPT instructions are one of the more important parts that's kind of outside of what the normal agent files are. We walk you through every instruction field and what it does and why. And once you get them all, I actually give you a single prompt that can walk through them. So the first thing we want to do is let ChatGPT know the role that it's playing. So you are a senior XYZ consultant, right? Maybe a strategic consultant, you're a marketing consultant, you're a product consultant, specializing in healthcare for healthcare IT data integration analysts. Your work product is, and then like what do you want to deliver? A board presentation, slides, or something like that. Without a role, the GPT defaults to like a generic assistant behavior. And we really want it to be very specific so it can help us lock into the domain. When you write yours, you can either identify the professional domain like strategy, marketing, HR, the specialization, which often is like the name of the set of agent files. So exit planning, brand positioning. The target audience is usually like who you're trying to support. And the deliverable is the thing that you're trying to get done. Now, you can get some of this from your actually start here agent file or your process consultant file. they do describe that information, but we'll also show you a quick way that you can view that in ChatGPT. The next is the goal. Like, what are you trying to do? And you're trying to run structured intake, produce and output a high quality deliverable. And I try to deliver it as a single self contained HTML because then I can upload it into my system. And so, again, how to fill this out is this like defines the output contract up front. I find like if you don't do this, you can get some funky stuff. For example, Claude Chat is a little bit better at really nice HTML output. Sometimes ChatGPT will just puke it all onto the screen. Sometimes Gemini won't even process it. You have to go through a bunch of times to get it to get you an HTML output. You might be better off if you're using Gemini to actually do a doc, right? Because it works better with the Google Doc suite. So without this part, the GPT may make it a summary, ask a lot of questions, just give you a markdown file, which it's not something you can see or read. So replace deliverable with whatever you want it to really produce, and then it will repeat it. You'll get it repeatedly, right? So it does eliminate some of the, like, you have to be very precise when you're talking to computers, right? So it eliminates that confusion or ambiguity, because otherwise what you're going to get is whatever it decided it thought you wanted, right? This one I found as I was building the first time, source of truth. You want the user's chat messages to have authority over, so be the most important amount of source of truth. So, for example, in the golden example, if there's some numbers in there to help it make sense for formatting, if I provide you new numbers or assumptions or company details, they must be the ones that win. So that was something we needed to add sort of in the instructions. And then do not claim data is missing just because it's not inside the upload file, because it just makes it look kind of like, oh, missing, 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 and then that doesn't look good. And treat data that is missing if is absent for both the conversation and the uploaded knowledge files, right? So the intention here is if it's in one or the other, it's not missing. Right. So, because what we had happen before is if it were in the knowledge file, it wasn't in the knowledge file, it'd say missing, but even if we put it in the conversation. So that's kind of how that turned out. So again, the GPT will say, I don't have access to your data, even if the user uploaded it in chat. So that was what we were trying to resolve there. Then context and operating models. So if the user specifies their context, industry, etc., don't change it. So again, anything in chat overrides anything in the sample files. So this helps to prevent some hallucinations, and make sure that even though we give it all that context with the agent files, that the user always wins, right? Also, don't reinterpret information. Use what the user said and assume that that's the correct information. The other component is just saying how you operate, right? Use the uploaded workflow files as your operating system. So we're telling it, like, you need to look at these files. That's how we're wiring everything together. And that's sort of like, again, the brain of the system. The other piece is like thinking about this as like a two-phased model or two-phased approach to the GPT. There's the intake mode, which is when it gets all of the information, right? So it needs to get all the details. This is where I ask it only to ask up to 10 questions after you give it data so that it doesn't like totally overwhelm the user. Of course, you can change this to whatever you want. You can make it, let it go as far as it wants to go. That's up to you. But once it gets all the info that it needs, then a second mode is like that final delivery, right? What it should look like at the end. So without that, the GPT will just keep asking questions forever and ever and ever. So again, you can customize that if you want, but the intention is to make sure that we get all of that. You could also look at your O2 context file, and that's all of the critical inputs that are in there. And you can just make sure you ask for that ahead of time and just upload it from the user, which is actually a little bit better of a way to go about it. Some other quality control things that I noticed I needed to add an instruction before giving the file: make sure it's validated against this quality file, make sure it's coherent in terms of financial logic, alignment, that the tables render nicely, that there's no markdown, and that if it fails, fix it before it delivers it. Again, these were just quality to make sure it worked well. Then the last part is you must use the code interpreter to create a downloadable file. So first of all, we put that in the instructions, but also you need to click code interpreter when you create the GPT. In addition to that, provide a downloaded file plus a confirmation line that says your file's ready. That was because it would like finish and then I didn't know. So that's why this line ended up being in there. And then here's a couple that I put in because again, ChatGPT sometimes will just puke a bunch of HTML files into the chat. So don't print the full inline HTML unless I ask for it. Do not wrap it in Markdown backticks. Do not add commentary before or after the confirmation line. Without it, it dumps thousands of lines of chat code into the chat. And then it truncates it, then it breaks it. It doesn't look good. So just trust me here, attached. Also make sure you click the code interpreter. Some other pieces, again, learned through trial and error. Do not mention internal file names in the final deliverable. We don't want it to be like, hey, user, and we use this context file. Don't explain your workflow unless we ask it to, because otherwise it goes through all of that. Here's what I'm doing, and here's why I did it, and here's what it looks like. And it puts all that stuff in there instead of just giving us a clean output. Do not give us partial drafts unless we ask. And also make sure you act like a premium consultant. And some of this, again, added as I was working through this process to make it work. Now, how could you just do this before, like it seems like a lot, right? And it is, right? So I'm going to actually, one of my little tricks that I do when I'm trying to take data from one place and put it to another. So first is do this before you create your GPT. What we're going to do is we're going to upload all 7 files to chat, and we're going to do this prompt. This prompt is the one that we just went through and did all of the details on, but we're going to make it easier for us to get the data that we want. So I'm going to add files or photos, and the files that I'm going to add are the ones that I said I was going to add before. Well, let's see if I can find where I put them now. Word presentation. There we go. So I'm going to add these files, open. And then, as I mentioned, you're going to copy and we're going to paste this just in there. Now, once I run this, which I'll run so I can talk, so hopefully it'll get done, what this is going to give us is the inputs that we're going to need when we go into this screen over here, which is when we're going to start building the GPT. So this will probably take us some time. Some tips and tricks of how my brain works, just as a note. I usually do actually open it up and look at what it's doing and the activities that it's doing, because sometimes that helps me realize how it operates and what it's thinking about, or what rules like it didn't do well. So like this one says, the search results aren't bringing up domain specific content, just vague references and executive coaching. I need precise deliverables, more structured, like case study example board prep, right? So it's telling me this kind of information like, oh man, maybe I needed to provide additional details. So I do read this, and again, it does just help me. Then as it goes through, it's funny, then it'll go, oh wait, there's more specific details about this, which I also find a little bit funny. So what we're going to do then is save that output, because it's going to give us the GPT name, the GPT description, some conversation starters, the role and the goal that we talked about, and all that output will be available. I usually actually, the couple times before, I just copy pasted it to a Word doc, but I don't think I actually have to do that. So fingers crossed that this will work. But my intention would be that it will show up on this chat, and then I can just go in at the GPT on this tab and copy the files over. So that would be what my intention is. There we go. So this is the output, right? So the GPT name, etc. So we're going to start to create the GPT. So if we go over here, and you scroll down, so you see I have lots of GPTs, and you hit explore, and then I'm going to hit create. Now I can go back over here and I can find the name, board agent prep, paste it here, description, right? Copy, paste it here. Then you'll notice it'll be in the later recommendations. Remember, I said a bunch of times, make sure you enable the code interpreter. Also, we're going to upload the board presentation files because that's what's the brain behind running all of this, right? You kind of go back here. Here are the conversation starters that you can use, which is kind of a neat, unique thing to ChatGPT that you can't do in Claude and you can't do in Gemini the same way. So this is one of the things I would say is a positive side of ChatGPT creating this way versus on the other one. But right, there's benefits to each of those different LLMs. So then what we're going to do, and I just copy all of it because otherwise I'm like, it doesn't hurt, right? But B, it tells it what this is for. So I'm copying everything that was my output and putting it in my instructions. So everything we talked about, right? It looks like if we go through what you and I were talking about before, the role, executive coaching consultant, specializing in board presentations. That's funny. Executive leadership at a talent firm, the goal, run structured intake, truth of stores, right? All of that was the stuff that we already talked about. So we're going to go back here for our instructions, make sure we're not missing anything. So we did the explore, we created and configured, put in the name and the description. We uploaded all the knowledge files. Yep. We enabled code interpreter. We pasted the generated instructions. We added the conversation starters. Correct. So now what's going to happen is phase one is going to do some intake. It's going to ask for information. Then it's going to do some execution. Finally, we're going to have some tests that we're going to do. And last, we're going to get the final files. So the code interpreter is what creates the HTML, which is why that's kind of part of the addition and like a nice add when you take those agent files and put them in ChatGPT is that code interpreter does this for you. The other thing is it reads all those files, so all the agent prompts, examples, everything that we did, and we give you a baseline context. But I would say again, it's always good to upload some more, and then making sure that everything looks good. So I'm going to go in here and go ahead and create this so that we can do a test. Oh, one more thing is I asked it, right? I was like, oh, what would be the best model? And it actually said for this specific presentation that 5.2 thinking model would be the best model. You can leave it to let it recommend it on its own. That's also fine. Let's just check additional settings. And then I turn off use this to improve the models. Because this is essentially, if you use this a lot, this would become proprietary for you. So we're going to hit create, and I'm going to put anyone with the link. I hit save, so it's going to happen. Now we're going to go back here and see what we're going to work on next. So this is the testing, right? So I put together a couple of ways to test it. You're going to test it with a complete deliverable, and I don't have any data, and to use synthetic data. You could also upload a document that already has the company details. Or if you're not sure, you can say, ask me the questions, right? So I'm probably going to just run one of these just to get through it and show you how it works. Likely just doing this, and it will tell me it should skip intakes, generate a full deliverable using assumptions, right? And this just proves that it can work, and it's essentially good for showing a modeling that it worked. So if we click View GPT, it's going to think a minute, maybe. I'm going to close that. So now we're in this one, right? So we're in the board presentation agent that we made. I'm just going to paste my test, build me a complete deliverable. I don't have data, use realistic assumptions. You could also, right, say I have my data, I have some data, prepare me, build my deliverable. Those are all the prompts that we created. So I'm going to hit the go button, and now it's going to build me a complete deliverable, even though I don't have any data. So I'm going to let that run, and while it's running, we'll go a couple others. So again, I'm not going to test all of these for you guys right now, but the reason we do the upload here is to test the sort of truth works and that the context is overridden by the user's details. And this one is to make sure that the two mode validation works, where you intake some details and then it produces delivery. through the question and answer version. So that's why those 3 ways of doing it's there. If it prints HTML inline, then go in and strengthen your instructions for making sure it does a file attachment. Another one is if it keeps saying missing data, reinforce in the instructions we had the source of truth rule. If it asks endless questions, go and say enforce the 10 question rule. And if it cuts off your HTML, then adding in that file attachment protocol has helped. So this are some of the things that have happened and how we fix them in case you run into it. So let's see how we're doing here. So it's still thinking. You'll notice, like, again, I always leave my analyzing open. If you kind of walk down through, you can see it's in the process of building it right now. And then when it's done building it, we should just get a message that says analyzing files completing kind of thing. So kind of go back here. So how would you do this? How would you reuse this? Well, if you wanted to build a second one or a third one or a 75th one, what's nice is you would just run the autofill prompt with the set of new 7 agent files, right? So if you were part of the community and you had 729 options, you could upload that new set of files into the chat like we did here, right? That's all we did here. We uploaded all of these with the information I gave you. And it will create our name, our description, our starters, and some instructions. Then you create a new GPT like we did here, which go to Explore, Create, Configure, and copy the information from the one chat into the GPT creator, upload the 7 knowledge files, and then the generated instructions and conversation starters. And then you just start running the tests, the synthetic test, user provided content, and then a guided intake. And what that should give you is one prompt, everything you need, new agent in minutes, right? I think the longest thing here is my talking and it producing its final output here. So, but it's not terrible, right? At this moment, we're at what? It's to see how long it says it's thinking. It's 36 seconds, which is funny. That seems like 5,200,000,000 years when you're standing here waiting for it. It's like what does it say? A watch pot doesn't boil. Have you ever heard that saying? But anyway, one prompt, everything you need, new agent in minutes. Here's in this file the reference for the complete instructions, which I just made it an easy copy and paste for myself since I reuse it. And why this works is because you have 6 different concerns that you're handling. You're first giving it knowledge through the files, the instructions do the governance, the process is in the execution discipline. The example file gives you the structure. The quality file helps you with validation. And then the output contract, right? That's the information that we put to tell it how we want it to come out. Let's see how we are in the thoughts. It's still thinking a little bit. All right. While it's thinking, I will kind of show you what we would do with the output once that output comes out. So now let's say you have all of this and it produces a downloadable file, which eventually it will. Now, if you are in the ROI Association for consultants, you have an HTML uploader. Now, I happen to have done this a few times before, showed some other folks. So let's say we go in here, and this is my board presentation HTML example. I did one of the many examples. If you just saw me grab, drag, and drop. If I hit publish, now I have the document. So I'm going to open it in another file so it's nice and clean. So this is what I created as a board presentation file. Now I manipulated this a bit to be in a slide kind of looking format, but it has just like going through based on for this one, I uploaded some sample data, right? So you get the executive summary, market and competitive review, financial performance, product and AI strategy updates, customer and retention, operation model and efficiency, risk review, priorities and board decisions, forward outlook, and closing. So that was one after I did some modifying of it. Let's see the very first one, how that one looks. I'm going to upload that. I think this is the one where I said, just give me random data. It was. Okay, so the very, very first one, random data. I didn't do anything other than say generate data. And so I got the executive summary, recommended decisions, assumptions that were used. Because remember, we said we didn't give it any data, we just gave it some data. So it tells us what our assumptions are, what story we're telling to the board, performance snapshot, key operating metrics, strategic priorities, a 90-day plan. So you kind of walk through the board deck outline step by step, what that outline looks like. The other one just gave me the deck versus giving me all of this information, and then how to talk through it and explain it to everyone. Some likely board questions that would be asked. So it's like a really, really nice sort of output that we're getting. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So we're going to download that file that we just got, right? So this is the one it just created for us. Look how familiar this looks. I told you that's what I did. So now this is the file we got, right? So we downloaded that file. So we're going to go to my downloads to show you exactly how that went, right? So download just now today. We're going to grab it and pull it over. Now it's in our folio. Click publish. We know it published because it's green, and I'm going to open it. So this is what we got from just no data, right? I was like, just yes, and tell me some fake data information. And it went through and it created all of this data that you could look at and give as like an outline. And then if you want follow-up things on this, this is what's great, right? So this is your prep. You can get more questions answered. Then maybe you create a presentation afterward, or maybe you ask better questions afterward. So that's how you can use our various different 7 files, right? What's it called? To create an output for a board presentation by running those in the context to get the input, and then creating a GPT. And if you want to do it again, you can just say new chat. And then you can say, like, I have my data ready. And if you had data ready, like the snowflake example, which if I can get back to mine, I can pull it in because I say I have my data ready, and then I can upload it. I hit go too fast. And now it will take the data that I already created and also do another presentation. So hopefully you guys found that interesting or helpful in the way that my brain works. I will do more of these behind the scenes, so definitely let me know in the comments if you found it supportive. Otherwise, I'll talk to you guys again the next time I'm solving a problem. Thanks so much. Bye.